Mormon women in particular felt the accusation that they were forced or duped into plural marriages and that just infuriated them.
Brittany Chapman Nash is a Latter-day Saint historian specializing in LDS women's history. We're talking about polygamy today. I want to struggle with the facts and not just the rumors, right?
Mm-hmm. David, I love everything you do, but as usual, I think we can go a little bit further with this topic. Folks, let's be real. Most Americans are already practicing polygamy, just really badly. You swap out partners instead of stacking them. You call it dating, divorce, or serial monogamy. Like a Netflix series that never gets finished. Ah, dark matter, I'll never forget you.
Expecting trouble?
Hoping.
Statistics say otherwise, with staggering reality. The average American has between 7 and 11 intimate partners during their lifetime. In the LGBTQ+ community, surveys show gay men average over 20 partners, with many openly admitting to hundreds of partners. Now, we can pretend this is serial monogamy, but the truth, it's polygamy on the installment plan. And there are actually many forms of polygamy and polyandry, the version where women have multiple man partners. Some involve plural marriage in the traditional sense, that often gets depicted in media or talked about by your preacher. But there have also been non-intimate polygamous marriages, where a man may be married to several women, but not have a physical relationship with any of them. These are sometimes marriages of convenience, or designed to tie families together in this life or in the next life. These women actually even go on to marry other men and have families with their traditional married partner. And there's a biblical precedence to consider here. Folks, this episode is not going to be what you think, so stick around. Number 1, polygamy is not some fringe idea. It's in the DNA of the Bible itself. Abraham took Hagar alongside Sarah in Genesis 16. After Sarah's death, he married Keturah and had concubines, Genesis 25:6. Jacob then also had Rachel and Leah, and both their handmaidens, 4 wives in all. The entire nation of Israel came from this polygamous household and is a polygamous family tree.
That's crazy.
King David also had multiple wives, and God even said through Nathan, "I give your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. And if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more." See 2 Samuel 12.
I'll take you in. You don't worry about a thing, darling.
Let's not forget, Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1 Kings 11.
You're a goof. You didn't read the daggone story. The stories all end awful.
In the New Testament, Paul does say church leaders should be the household of one wife, 1 Timothy 3:2.
You see Paul saying one woman man married of one wife. So you see this all throughout the New Testament.
But notice he didn't say all men everywhere must only ever have one wife. And lest we forget, Paul frequently contradicts teachings of Jesus. A topic for another time. But then again, Martin Luther, who loved shocking the Catholic Church, admitted in 1539, quote, "I confess that I cannot forbid a person to marry several wives, for it does not contradict the Scriptures." Martin Luther, letter to Philip of Hessia in 1539. Biblically speaking, monogamy is the new kid on the block. And oh, the haters in the comments. To which I say, remember Europe's quiet polygamy? Mistresses and monarchy. If we fast forward to Christian Europe, monogamy was preached, but mistresses were institutionalized. Louis XIV of France had an official mistress wing in Versailles. Henry VIII may have broken with Rome for divorce, but mistresses filled his courts. Nobles and bishops alike also kept companions. So while sermons thundered against polygamy, everyone lived in a not-so-secret plural system. The only difference, it was hidden, unequal, and deeply hypocritical. No accountability, no protection for the women or children that came of such indulgence, and it resulted in many lives cut short or left unfulfilled. as it often does today. Enter the American experiment, LDS polygamy. The Latter-day Saints in the 19th century openly practiced polygamy, not in secret, not in scandal, but as a covenantal practice. Families built self-sufficient communities. The reality? Widows were cared for. Orphans were taken in. Women often chose plural marriage because it provided stability, sisterhood, and security in a rough frontier world where husbands were likely to die and frequently did.
Whatever you do, don't die.
It also provided women with greater opportunity to serve in their community, including greater higher education, participating in government, and running businesses. You know, the things that women living in the rest of the supposedly free United States were forbidden from doing.
There's this wonderful letter from a woman who's writing to her aunt. The author of the letter is a member of the church. The aunt is not, and she's kind of explaining what polygamy is and why people practice it. And she goes on to express exactly what you've talked about, that there are much easier ways to have affairs than to make a lifetime commitment to someone.
Yeah.
So you might ask, why then was it demonized? Morality? Hardly. Allow me to introduce you to Fred Du Bois. Not Du Bois, he apparently hated that. Du Bois was Idaho's first U.S. senator, who admitted in his journals that attacking Mormon polygamy was a political weapon. He wrote that it was a strategy to disenfranchise Mormons and strip them of power, so that his own political party and political interests would be dominant in Idaho. In other words, it wasn't about righteousness. It was about votes, power struggles, and control. You want to hear what he said about it? I bet you want to hear what he said about it. Okay. Du Bois wrote, "We had no more interest in the question of polygamy than we had in the man in the moon. We used the polygamy issue to disenfranchise the Mormon Church, to take away from them their political power." Journal entry, late 19th century. In short, polygamy wasn't defeated on biblical grounds. It wasn't criminalized because it was immoral. It was criminalized because it made Mormons too unified, too wealthy, and too politically threatening. And by the way, that's something many Protestants need to deal with already. Come on, it's been a century. Next time you want to snap at another faith's traditions, remember the 19th century polygamy system had practical benefits. Shared labor, running households, farms, and childcare. Spiritual sisterhood. Women described themselves as companions in covenant.
And came to deeply love and appreciate their sister wives, who loved their husbands, who lived in community with their families, and the children were taught to love one another equally as brothers and sisters. You know, there wasn't separation between the families.
And childhood friends sometimes planned to marry the same man to keep their families together.
Actually not uncommon for a first wife or second wife to seek out an additional wife for her husband. And that occurred for a variety of reasons. Some women planned in advance for having a sister wife. Perhaps sisters or good friends would say, you know, when we get married, let's marry together. Let's marry the same man. And so sometimes they would get married the same day.
Security. Widows and older women found support in large family units. Leadership roles. Plural wives became some of the earliest female editors, speakers, and suffragists in the United States. Even the New York Times, which was as wrong-headed then as it is today, grudgingly acknowledged in the 1870s that Mormon women seemed healthier, stronger, and more intelligent than expected, contradicting anti-polygamy propaganda.
And there were women who thrived in polygamous families.
In short, Mormon plural wives weren't passive victims. They were some of the earliest women in America to organize politically, defend their rights in public, and secure the vote. 50 years before the 19th Amendment. Ironically, federal anti-polygamy campaigns helped create some of the most outspoken female suffragists of the 19th century.
Prospective plural wives would approach the first wife either through a letter or speaking in person and saying, hey, is this okay?
Really?
Yeah, to just like, I'm considering marriage with your husband. Are you really okay with it? Because having a positive experience and relationship with your sister wife made a huge difference.
But let's talk about the modern crisis, infidelity and divorce. Fast forward to today, what do we see? 20 to 25% of men and 10 to 15% of women admit to cheating during marriage. Divorce rates hover around 40 to 45%, and in most divorces, infidelity, unmet needs, illness, or financial stress are leading causes. But here's the kicker. Many divorces lead to remarriage, creating a cycle of serial polygamy. Instead of acknowledging needs, we punish people for failure, perceived or actual, and force them into endless monogamous reboots, where some of the same problems are repeated, but with compounding baggage and crippling financial burdens that are frequently unearned and undeserved. And I'm just saying, instead of hiding it, plural marriage could bring honesty, security, and accountability to the relationships people are already having. So let's think about it. Are there practical benefits to polygamy today? As I do with this channel, let's be satirical, but also serious. Polygamy might actually work better than what we've got. Infertility, illness, childcare, economics, community, and work-life balance. Well, if one partner can't have children, the family line doesn't collapse. If one spouse is chronically ill, care doesn't fall on just one, and family lines don't collapse. Goodbye $1,500 a month childcare bills. Extra adults means kids are raised by a team and not by daycare. Shared income makes mortgages lighter and homes more stable. The 19th century practice often found sister wives forming strong bonds that created mutual friendships instead of isolation that is often found today. Families could also rotate responsibilities instead of burning out two exhausted parent providers. And did you know, several countries, such as Japan, have even floated polygamy as a response to shrinking birth rates and aging demographics. When society struggles, group solutions might be smarter than nuclear family stubbornness. Of course, there are also concerns and critiques. Isn't polygamy just jealousy multiplied? Well, isn't monogamy already failing that test? If 25% of marriages face infidelity, maybe jealousy is the human problem, not the marital format. Notably, LDS marriages are 3 to 5 times more successful than the average American, who is more than likely one of the hundreds of forms of a traditional Christian. And the LDS haven't practiced polygamy in 150 years, so clearly interpersonal issues don't have to be the driving factor. What about women's rights? Historically, polygamy leaned male. One man, many wives. But modern plural marriage might explore polyandry, one woman, several husbands. I mean, if one party is going to consistently push for equality across all dimensions, then we might have to consider options for everyone. Law and taxes. Yes, it might complicate paperwork, but if we can design tax codes for multinational corporations, I think we can figure out marriage math. On the other hand, haven't we all wanted a tax reform for decades anyway? Well, here's the excuse to finally make it happen. What about religion? Many Christians argue that polygamy is unholy or immoral.
See, I'm a monogamist and I'm a committed Christian. You should have no reason to doubt that. I think polygamy is wrong and immoral, yet I'm a committed Christian.
Yet the very foundations of Israel came from a polygamous household. God literally gave King David multiple wives. Are we more righteous than the prophets? As an aside, I once heard a Christian argue against the Book of Mormon because he said it teaches polygamy. Yeah, tell me you haven't read the book without telling me you haven't read the book. The second witness of Christ, known as the Book of Mormon, actually affirms a man have one wife and no concubines. So, Protestants, you can check that off your list of countless misconceptions. Even so, anyone else find it incredibly lacking in self-awareness that a Christian would dismiss a book for the possibility of polygamous teaching and still unflinchingly stand by the Bible? That's hilarious. Okay, are you ready for my final thoughts? I'm not advocating for polygamy, but I am tired of the trope.
Oh, you're being ignorant. I'm so tired of people being ignorant.
History matters, and many Christians have it all backwards. They like to demonize polygamy and attack those who were once associated with its practice, but ignore the fact that America, a majority Christian nation, is a polygamous nation. Yeah, in fact, most nations are. They just do it badly, even to their detriment. I'm not saying we should have institutionalized polygamy. I'm pointing out we already have one, and it doesn't work for most Americans. But is it God's original group plan? Well, no. There are certainly reasons to not practice polygamy. Even the Bible has provisions for the practice. God has at times given a few more wives to certain individuals for specific purposes. But it isn't for everyone or for any time. Even among the Latter-day Saints' 19th century practice, polygamy was limited, with several restrictions and guidelines and permissions that had to be obtained.
The steps you go through to get married polygamously.
Yeah.
And he mentions, you talk to your first wife about it, you get permission from the president of the church, you go talk to the prospective fiance's parents, you talk to then the actual woman, if everybody else is okay. But I hadn't heard before that prospective fiance would often go talk to the first wife as well.
And only about 10 to 20% of the population actually practiced it.
There's a carnality and carnal lust that is often behind polygamy, the same kind of thing that's behind adultery, where a man just wants to experiment and try something different.
I was still surprised every time I found records of men just dragging their feet, not wanting to participate in polygamy.
Journals indicate that even many of the men weren't interested in participating and took on the role reluctantly, often to fulfill community or leadership responsibilities or help someone who lost their husband or needed help with orphaned children.
When we're talking about polygamy, we have to recognize that every story is different.
But if nothing else, remember, statistics indicate that you have probably already engaged in some form of polygamy. If you have ever had more than one partner, you are who I'm talking about. The only difference between you and Solomon is honesty. Now let's not forget possible additional discussion topics. Could plural marriage reduce incel culture and gender conflict? How might plural households stabilize housing markets and poverty? And could polygamy reduce government dependence, such as welfare and childcare subsidies? Let me know down in the description, and don't forget to check out my book, The Saints Who Built America. And I will see you next time.